radio. Overhead, the albatross hangs motionless upon the air, and deep beneath the rolling waves, in labyrinths of coral caves, the echo of a distant tide comes willowing across the sand, and everything is green and silvery. And no one shows us to the land, and no one knows the wares or whys, and something stirs, and something tries, and starts to climb towards the light. Towards the light. So, following that superior live version, we'd like to welcome you to the court of the Wenton King. Today we're reviewing a new band. That new band is Genesis, and we're starting with... We Can't Dance Now, really. Foxtrot! An interesting starting point, I think. I don't think it's their best album. It was the album I thought I should be listening to from what I'd read. Some people consider Trespass, Nursery Crime, Foxtrot to be a trilogy, so this is kind of the end of a trilogy. Production's a bit rough, so not sure if it is a starting point or not, but we're going to start with it, because I think it starts the main sequence.
Excellent. I've been ill this week, Kev.
I know, yeah.
And I've been ill for most of the week.
You've been ill enjoying Genesis.
And you know, when you're ill, you get a very fine sense of what is clean food and what is not. I seem to get the same with music. For some reason, Genesis was not clean music.
It was not clean.
I couldn't face it. I've listened to it a couple of times, and actually it's very hard to put my finger on why this isn't clean music. And I think it's the same with any music that isn't clean, with say gong or something like that. It's obvious why that's not clean. There's no like real jarring brass section in here or anything like that. The keyboards are mostly harmonious. There is a little bit of the penetrating synth stuff going on, but it's not too bad. All the instruments are doing what they should do in a very capable manner. Yet for some reason it's not clean. And I'll give you a Lark's Tongue in Aspic is clean music.
That's interesting.
It's really interesting, and I cannot put my finger on what it is.
The easy answer is it's unfamiliar. The thing about all these bands, they're lumped together, and particularly Genesis and Yes, and yet they're not really anything like each other at all, and there isn't really anything like this. There's a lot of stuff that's influenced by this, which isn't really like. It's a unique sound, and it really is Victorian rock music. I think people would listen to it now and think that it sounded very old, but it's always sounded very old. It's supposed to sound very old. And I think what they've got over Yes is ultimately they're songwriters. You know, they were formed as a collective of songwriters. They were going to write songs for other people. So whatever it is they're doing, it's always servicing the song. Particularly, it's the Tony Banks thing is what it's all about, really. It's Tony Banks chords. It's those song structures, and there is a sense of perfection that isn't in Yes.
Yeah, I did pick up on that. There are certain sections which are really, because it's very hard to pin down sort of a track and say this is what this track is, because it changes quite a lot within the track, both in style and tempo and all that. So it's very hard to say, this track's this. And there are some really, really good pieces of music in there. At times I do feel it's a little bit of just chucking notes at it, but nowhere near as much as someone like Yes tend to just blare it at you. Maybe, I don't know if it's the vocals are quite low in the mix. Peter Gabriel, he's similar to John Anderson in the sense that he's quite high, and he just constantly pounds at you at that sort of level. If he's not doing the theatrics, when he's doing the theatrics, he's great. The theatrical stuff on this album,
yeah,
when he gets into it, I really you know, I really don't mind that at all, and I quite like it, and I think it actually adds something. But yeah, there are moments where I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the notes coming at me. But there are other times where it is, as you say, servicing the song.
I think that expression, servicing the song, it suits this. It means something here. It's a misused expression. It can really mean just being commercial, an excuse for being commercial and calling it service. But that's really is what they're doing. You know, whereas Yes will say, well, that bit's cool, let's do that. Genesis wouldn't do that to it, even though at this point the production's very rough.
I did feel. I was wondering if that was it, because it feels kind of mushy.
Yeah.
It's like being hit over the head with a pillow.
I did actually Google Foxtrot earlier today, and a Foxtrot is a progressive dance. I thought it was quite clever. I didn't realise that. Should we do the first song?
Yeah. Watcher of the Skies.
Watcher of the Skies. I think this is an excellent intro to Genesis. You've got lots of keyboards at the start, and I don't think anyone had really done that at that point. It was to such an extent a just keyboard intro like that, and it works fantastically well introducing the album. Works better introducing a concert, and obviously it's fast and it's a rocker, not sounding like Metallica. So it's fast and rocking, but it's weird and Victorian and that unique style. So perfect in that sense.
Yeah, it starts very, very suddenly and very with a jolt. It's a sort of, okay, listen to this. The keyboards were a little bit much for me, and I can imagine it's the kind of track that, you know, once you've heard it a few times, you could potentially hear it to death, and it could become a little bit. You could get jaded at this quite quickly.
Yeah, it doesn't have the lasting appeal of some of the other stuff. Next song.
Timetable.
Timetable. There's two songs on here that aren't famous. This is the first one. This is the forgettable one, really. Some nice melodies, very much in the style of those first three albums. Melodies.
Genesis.
And it sounds like Genesis. Yeah.
Track 3.
Get 'Em Out by Friday, very different. This is their first attempt at this very sort of theatrical, story-driven thing, and the band are quite critical of it, because, of course, what they did when they wrote an instrumental piece, and then Peter Gabriel had to make the vocals, basically, although they all took part in writing lyrics to a certain extent. But what happened with Get 'Em Out by Friday was the band made this very busy piece of music, which is really good, with some great playing in it, particularly some fantastic drumming. And then Peter Gabriel wrote all these lyrics, you know, all these words at 100 miles an hour all the way over it, so it's incredibly busy. It's hard to focus on what's going on at the same time, but it suits the subject matter of the lyrics, I think, and it suits it, it works. Mm-hmm. Whereas when they attempted it again, I don't think it did. And it's incredibly bleak, despite being kind of very much a sort of cartoon, and obviously the ending as well is really silly. The message from Genetic Control is that there is now a height restriction on human beings, and yet it's ever so dark, you know, so brilliant.
Yeah,
Great bit of Gabriel.
Fantastic
bit of playing.
Yeah, I really like this one. As I said a moment ago, I like the theatrics, and I think what it is it's a nice break from the vocal sound, because he tends to sort of throw the vocals at you, all in the sort of like soprano range. If there was anything in the alto range, it would be more manageable for me. But when he does the theatrics, it breaks it up. So there's that going on. Plus, as you say, the ideas are they're pretty bleak, but they're pretty interesting. They may be adding to the aura of it feeling like a bad trip for me.
Okay, next song.
Can Utility and The Coastliners.
This, for me, is the forgotten classic. It's significant because technically it's the last song, particularly in this style. It's very typical of these three albums, this trilogy, and it's the last one, effectively, of that particular style. And for me, when you get that 12-string chord mantra, dun, 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 and when the Mellotron comes in, that's one of the Genesis moments. There are moments in Genesis of awesome, and that is fantastic. And nothing sounds like that. Nothing. So to say it's prog doesn't sound anything like ELP, doesn't sound anything like any other prog band. You know, it's completely unique. I don't think there's a commercially available live version of it. I don't think it was played live very much, and it's fantastic. But it is forgotten.
Yeah. There's a word, I mean, it's 5 minutes 46 long. You know, I use the word concision simply because of the ground they cover in that period of time. It's got everything in there, everything that is Genesis-y in that one song, and it is probably my favourite song on the album.
Right. Next song.
Horizons.
This is Steve Hackett's solo excursion. Much like with Steve Howe's solo excursions, he's destined to play this for the rest of his life. Luckily for Steve Hackett, though, his actual signature song was yet to come and wasn't just a solo. But he still has to play it, I think, at every concert, I'd imagine. And very nice it is too. Neoclassical thing.
Baroque type, clean music. It is essentially a bridging piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
To the next monstrosity.
And of course, the album's far too long. This is on the same side as Supper's Ready, which is 23 minutes. Genesis had a problem with long albums, I think, due to not being able to agree what should go on and what shouldn't go on, so they just had to compromise and put everything.
It's only 6 tracks. Wow.
Yeah, well, now that's fine, but on the LP it was too long. The LPs were too long and they sounded dodgy because they were too long.
I was going to say, it's about 50 minutes in it or something like that.
Yeah, it's 50 minutes. Shocking. So, here we go. The mighty journey of Supper's Ready. Zappa was ready. Preceded by some of Peter Gabriel's best storytelling silliness. This is a very famous track, and it's always used as an example of that was prog. Was these massive epics of with all sorts of things going on. It was just awful, or it was amazing, depending on whether you've heard it or not. Having heard what you've said, I know what you're going to say, but this was one of the things I was wary of doing Genesis. This and The Lamb, because it's famous for taking time to get into it, and it was for me, in that when I first got the album, I disliked the bits that reminded me of Phil Collins. and Supper's Ready was just too much. It felt like it was just all over the place with lots of different stuff being all stuffed together. But it isn't. It is actually a cohesive piece of music. You've got Willow Farm in the middle of it, which is the mad pop song. But other than that, it is a cohesive piece of music and it does work fantastically well. But for whatever reason, you don't get the melodies. Or I didn't anyway. I didn't get the melodies and the way they reprise and everything for a while. But now, it is utterly fantastic. But I had to listen to it this week. I didn't really listen to the rest of the album, but I had to listen to this. Because to me, it's the live versions. Because I haven't heard the album version in a very, very long time. And I think it's better live. Some of it's a bit difficult to sing, but that's okay. Because it's, I think Peter Gabriel's weirdness is a very important element, because he's influenced by soul and things like this, put into this very English music. It's very strange. I think it's important having it there, because without that, it does become more predictable. It gives it an edge, and they played it for many, many years. They played it, I think they stopped playing it consistently in 78, and they played just Lover's Leap. Is it 98 or 97? I don't know, strangely, with the band from the Jeans advert.
As sure as eggs is eggs. It is an incredibly immense thing to get your lugs around in 1
week. You've had 1 week to
it's quite a lot. I mean, I didn't find it. I actually quite enjoyed it. But it's hard to sort of finger on any single one thing.
It is one of their definitive moments for me. Apocalypse in 9/8 is just a fantastic riff. That's just fantastic, and you've got the keyboard solo over the top in 4/4, which apparently originally was a joke. He was sort of making fun of it. He was doing a Keith Emerson. You've got the Mad Flower stuff, Willow Farm. But yeah, and it's interesting, I've no idea what the lyrics are about, but I can sing the whole thing with all the keyboard solos.
Isn't it? I thought it was a revelation, something to do with revelation, something like that.
Something like that, something religious, spiritual stuff. It's a journey
into sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kev loves Foxtrot.
I like Foxtrot. It's a good album. So yeah, well, as I said, I can sing the whole song. So we'll finish on a cover version of Supper's Ready. Walking across the sitting room.